Hello everyone and welcome back to Comparison World Facts. Today we'll be comparing New York to Beijing, our first city comparison. Have you ever visited either of these massive cities? If you had the choice, which would you prefer to see? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. New York and Beijing are two of the most populated cities in the world. Both are important financial centers and both have extremely large populations. However, these two cities could hardly be more different. To begin with, they're located on opposite sides of the world. One is located in North America and the other in Eastern Asia. But even with their own respective regions, these two metropolises couldn't be any more different from one another. In some ways, New York and Beijing aren't just polar opposites, they seem to exist on opposite ends of a spectrum for urban living. First, which metropolis is bigger? Well, New York has a population of over 8.3 million people. However, Beijing is much larger with 21.5 million people, making Beijing over 2.5 times as big as New York City. On top of that, New York City has an area of roughly 12,000 square kilometers, whereas Beijing has a massive area of over 16,400 square kilometers, making Beijing the larger of the two. So, what are some similarities between the two? The cost of living is a very significant similarity between the two cities. New York City is a costly place to live, where the median house costs well over double what it would cost in most of the United States, roughly $653,000 compared to just $292,000. However, in Beijing, the cost of living is much cheaper, a whole 50% more reasonable than in New York. But the citizens of Beijing also make less money, which has led to Beijing receiving the notorious title of the world's most unaffordable city. The rent alone averages 1.2 times the average salary, even with many nurses that have to pay more than they make just to make rent alone. On top of this, commuting to work in Beijing is no easy task. The average commute in the city takes over 1.5 hours. You might be asking, why is rent so expensive in Beijing? Well, for starters, the city has grown by roughly 2 million people in just 2 years. On top of this, the government as well as the military owns much of the land in Beijing, which means they cannot put houses there, so fewer homes with millions of people moving to the city, as well as the thousands of students attending Beijing's more than 90 universities, with students sure to be moving to the city each year, which all do their part in leading to this housing crisis. Keep watching closely to hear how many million collections the National Museum of China has. Up next, what are the differences between the two? The first difference between New York and Beijing is their climates. Beijing is located in a subtropical monsoon climate zone that features humid, primarily rainy weather for much of the year. On the other hand, New York is located in a humid subtropical climate zone with hot, humid summers with temperatures ranging from an average of 25 to 29 degrees Celsius and mild to occasionally cold winters, which typically vary between 0 to 5 degrees Celsius. Regarding topography, Beijing sits in a broad, flat floodplain at the northern edge of the Bohai Sea. On the other hand, New York sits on Manhattan Island along the Hudson River about 100 miles south of the Atlantic Ocean. Both cities feature large swaths of urban sprawl, but Beijing's sprawl is contained within a larger, more rigid topographical envelope than New York's. This is because two large deserts hem in Beijing to the north and west and massive mountain ranges to the south. Another difference between the two cities is that New York is directly on the water with 12 beaches nearby. Sadly, there are no beaches nearby for those who reside in Beijing. However, if you wanted to see the beach, you could make a day trip out of it and drive over 2 hours each way to see the man-made Tianjin Beach. But sadly, swimming is not allowed as the beach is right on a port. You may see some ships in the water though. The next difference between New York and Beijing is their transportation. Beijing is infamous for its congested roads. Traffic jams are so common that they even crossed into pop culture. New York, on the other hand, is famous for having an efficient, extensive subway system. In fact, Beijing has more vehicles than it can handle. The city's roads and highways can't handle the sheer volume of autos. This is due to the fact that most auto owners have to park on the street and drive to work with other cars, which leads to hours of gridlock. In contrast, New York's subway system moves millions of commuters in and out of the city every day, and it's efficient enough to let commuters read, relax, or work on their laptops on the subway. So, why are the two cities important? New York and Beijing are also very different in terms of economics. Beijing is China's cultural and political capital and is home to the country's most important industries and businesses. On the other hand, New York is one of the most important financial centers in the world. Both cities are important financial centers, but they serve different industries. New York is known as an American financial center that specializes in trading, investing, and finance-related services. The city is also a key global media, real estate, and art hub. Beijing, on the other hand, is known for its role as a Chinese financial center that specializes in commodities, futures, and equities. New York and Beijing are also different culturally. New York is an international hub with many cultures represented within its borders, where you can see the world in one city. Beijing, on the other hand, was historically known as the Forbidden City. It has a very distinct Chinese culture and features many monuments and cultural landmarks that are famous throughout the world. On the other hand, New York is less distinct, which is excellent so that everyone can find something they like. Both cities are intriguing and exciting in their own right. Up next, what food should you try in these cities? Now we turn to the difference between New York and Beijing in terms of food and dining. Beijing is known for its vast, diverse assortment of Chinese cuisines. This is due to the fact that Beijing is the country's cultural and political capital. New York is known for its vast, diverse assortment of cuisines, but they're not primarily Chinese, they span the globe. In fact, there are so many different restaurants in New York that it can be overwhelming, but there's truly something for everyone in the Big Apple. New Yorkers can enjoy Italian, Mexican, Indian, Chinese, Middle Eastern, Brazilian, French, African, and Caribbean cuisines in one evening without ever leaving Manhattan. If we had to pick just one restaurant in New York City to recommend, we'd have to choose the New York Marriott Marquis, complete with a beautiful view of the city and a fantastic menu. It's impossible to go wrong. What should you do while in New York? New York is a city that never sleeps. It offers something for everyone, from culture to beaches and everything in between. There are several things you should do while in New York. First, the Statue of Liberty is one of the most popular tourist attractions. Sculptor Frederic Auguste Bartholdi built the copper statue back in 1876 to 1874. Other exciting landmarks include the Empire State Building, Central Park, and Times Square. If you're looking for relaxation, head to one of the beaches, or you could even see a Broadway show. What should you do while in Beijing? There are many things to do while traveling in Beijing. First, you could visit some of the city's many historical sites. The most popular place to visit would undoubtedly be the Great Wall of China, just a 70-kilometer drive from Beijing. A second is the Forbidden City. The Forbidden City was the main imperial palace used in both the Ming and Qing dynasties. You could also walk through one of Beijing's many parks, such as Tiananmen Square or the Summer Palace. If you're interested in the arts, you could visit the Beijing Opera or the National Museum of China. Did you know the National Museum of China is the largest single-built museum in the world? It has over 14 million collections. These two cities certainly differ in many ways. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts. Thanks for watching.